ESPN and Tommy Boy present Jock Jams, the hottest crowd-pumping sports jams of all time. Jock Jams, available at record stores everywhere.
Jock Jams were a relic of my childhood and maybe yours too. I always remember somebody blasting Jock Jams when I was at basketball practice in junior high, and chances are if you've played some sort of sport or been to a sporting event or even watched sports on TV, then you've probably heard Jock Jams at some point in time. But how did Jock Jams get so popular and whatever happened to them? That's what we're going to explore in today's video. Jock Jams owes its success to several women. This story really begins in 1977 in Chicago at Comiskey Park, where the Chicago White Sox played. The organist at the home games was a woman named Nancy Faust. Organ music in baseball dated back decades all the way to 1941. By the 70s, organists for sports teams were mostly made up of males, but Faust was really a trailblazer, and it would be an experiment of hers that really changed the sound of sports as we know it today. She would tell The Atlantic that it was a summer night in 1977 while the White Sox were playing the Kansas City Royals. The Royals pulled their pitcher from the game. She would then proceed to play Nana Hey Hey Kiss 'Em Goodbye, a song that topped the music charts in 1969 by the band Steam. Crowds soon began to sing along with the chorus, with Faust telling The Atlantic, created quite a stir. I never heard people sing like that before. Mercury Records would re-release the song, and Faust got awarded a gold record. It would be another Chicago native, Monica Lynch, who would move to New York City by 1978, getting involved in the party scene, being a waitress and working as a topless dancer. But by 1981, she wanted a different type of job and answered an ad in the Village Voice for a new struggling rap label called Boy Records. She would end up being the first employee on the label, and by 1985, she soon became the label's president, having steered it through better times, and in the subsequent years, they would actually be pretty successful, having artists such as Queen Latifah and De La Soul on their roster. The New York Times would label Lynch in the 90s as, and I quote, the high priestess of hip-hop, and Tommy Boy would end up teaming up with MTV in 1994 to release a compilation called Party to Go, which was successful, selling over 500,000 copies in America. Tommy Boy founder Tom Silverman would tell MTV why they partnered with the network, saying, "We did a compilation series called MTV Party to Go to raise money for the American Cancer Society after former Viacom CEO Tom Freston's dad died of cancer. We raised $12 million with a compilation of MTV Party records." That laid the groundwork for what was to come. But compilation records were nothing new though. In the 60s and 70s, there was a company called K-Tel who was putting them out, but by the 90s, Tommy Boy soon took their place. How does sports tie in with the whole thing? Well, one of the perks of Lynch's job was that she had box seats to Madison Square Garden and attended numerous New York Rangers and New York Knicks games. It was while she attended those games that she noticed that the loudspeaker was playing a variety of rock, hip-hop, R&B music mixed in with the organ. She noticed the energy of the crowd responding to the music and wondered if she could package that and create a compilation album or greatest hits of the songs that were being played at that sporting event. Lynch would tell Huffington Post, "To tell you the truth, it was like one of those very simple, very obvious ideas. I would hear the same music being played at the games, all these classic rock and R&B tracks with these organ bits in between, so I thought this stuff would probably be easy to license." She would end up reaching out to a man named Ray Castaldi, who would end up being Madison Square Garden's musical director, organist, and DJ since 1989. He jumped at the idea, telling the Huffington Post, "It's an idea that had been going around in my head. We have all these songs we play at the games from a wide variety of genres, but they all seem to work together in the context of making people crazy at sporting events. Why don't we put them all in one place?" You have to remember that this was way before Napster existed and Apple Music and streaming services like Spotify, so it wasn't really easy to get all these songs in one place. And Castaldi, for his part, was also a trailblazer, sometimes butting heads with his management, admitting to ESPN.com, hip-hop music as a pop music forum, that idea was still pretty new. "My first bosses at MSG told me, 'Hey, we're not running a nightclub up there. These hip-hop records, are they really the kind of music our audience is going to groove to?' And the answer was, of course, absolutely." Tommy Boy Records now just needed a partner to give some legitimacy to the whole thing, and who better than ESPN? ESPN was experiencing phenomenal growth by the mid-90s, but ESPN and Tommy Boy were two completely different run companies and were really an odd couple. Sharon Tamer, who was the former director of ESPN Enterprises, would tell ESPN.com, in the 90s, ESPN brand was starting to be everywhere. ESPN2 had just started, and there was talk of ESPN News and Classic. We wanted to start licensing the ESPN brand to products and services. It was like the Wild Wild West. We worked on .com, the magazines, video games, fantasy sports, merchandise, and music. We didn't even have to seek out that many opportunities. You just had to sit back and see what people brought to us. And ESPN was kind of straight-laced and Tommy Boy Records was not. We weren't into being provocative at all, and Tommy Boy was totally the opposite. But there were some skeptics about the whole idea. In fact, Tommy Boy Records' Steve Nustin, who was the director of sales at the time, would tell Huffington Post, "I thought it was the worst idea. I thought it was really stupid. Why would anyone do this? Especially a hip-hop label," he would ask. Prior to Jock Jams, which debuted in 1995, Tommy Boy released a compilation album along with ESPN called Jock Rock Volume 1 in 1994, which proved to be successful, selling about 500,000 copies. Jock Rock would contain old rock staples like We Will Rock You by Queen, Born to Be Wild by Steppenwolf, and Taking Care of Business by Bachman Turner Overdrive. It was the following year they would release Jock Rock Volume 2, and it was the same year that the first volume of Jock Jams was released. Castaldi would tell ESPN.com how Jock Jams different from Jock Rock, saying, "Jock Rock was almost entirely oldies. With Jock Jams, it was about, let's talk about the new stuff." Released on July 25, 1995, Jock Jams Volume 1 would contain an assortment of a dozen or so stadium-friendly hip-hop, dance, and rock songs, and Castaldi would be critical in helping choose the best tracks, as he was seeing in real time what fans were responding to at Rangers and Knicks games. The Volume 1 compilation would open up with the infamous Let's Get Ready to Rumble intro by Michael Buffer, and it turned out, much to the surprise of Tommy Boy Records, licensing Michael Buffer's famous line was actually quite expensive. While it would contain classic tracks like YMCA by the Village People and Gary Glitter's Rock and Roll Part 2, there were many newer hits as well, probably by artists that people had heard on the radio before, but didn't really know who the artist was. A lot of one-hit wonders. While Tommy Boy wanted to get some rock tunes like Guns N' Roses' song Welcome to the Jungle, they soon found that licensing a song like that was too difficult, as it was either too expensive or the band wouldn't be interested in the project, while other groups like the British band Blur didn't want to be anywhere near a sports-focused record, which is kind of funny considering you hear Song 2 played everywhere at sporting events nowadays. Then came the back and forth between ESPN and Tommy Boy Records. ESPN was very protective of their brand, which was family-friendly, and didn't want to include songs that had suggestive lyrics or double entendres, so some of the artists who were actually licensed for the first volume had to make up stories about the song's lyrics or the band's origins, including the group 69 Boys, whose song Tootsie Roll was part of the first compilation. J. Ski McGowan, who is 69 Boys' producer, would tell an interviewer, "We just decided, hey, if anyone asks from ESPN, just say the guys were all born in 1969 and Tootsie Roll is a candy and a fun dance and leave it at that." Sharon Tamer would tell ESPN.com that rather than slapping the ESPN name on the CD, they wanted to add a sports twist to the compilation, revealing the challenge was, how do we put an ESPN spin on it? How do we brand it with ESPN? That's when we came up with the idea of what we call interstitials, little sports-related sound bites you'd hear between songs, with Castaldi adding, the goal from the beginning was to make an immersive sports experience like you were actually at the game. We recorded cheerleaders, hot dog vendors at Yankee Stadium, marching bands. The cover of Jock Jams Volume 1 would feature 3 cheerleaders with a bright orange background, with the phrase, "the hottest crowd pumping grooves of all time." Within 14 months, the album sold 1 million copies, going platinum. Then in 1996 came Jock Jams Volume 2, which was even a bigger success, as the release would peak at number 10 on the album charts and would go platinum in just 3 months. The album was helped in large part by the inclusion of one of the biggest hits of the year, which was the Macarena. For the rest of the decade, Jock Jams were selling in the millions, and it was during this time Jock Jams made up a whopping 30% of Tommy Boy Records' income. What made the compilation release such an attractive business venture was that it was pretty low cost. The biggest cost for assembling the compilation was licensing the music, while a typical release would have much more overhead, including scouting for talent, recording an album, providing tour support, and so forth. What also made the compilation so successful was that it was a really big demographic buying these albums. It wasn't just fans of Major League Sports, as soon enough teenagers and college kids were buying it for their sports teams, and even people who want to stay physically fit would also buy them when they took workout classes or just simply went to the gym. Silverman would tell the Huffington Post it was the Red Bull of music. Tommy Boy would release their final Jock Jams compilation in 2001. You're maybe wondering what happened. Well, part of the reason was the same thing that impacted the rest of the music industry. File sharing sites like Napster and CD burning technology soon allowed people to make their own compilation records. So why shell out money when you could get the music for free, as well as copy the track list or make your own track list? On top of that, it became much more difficult to find songs each year with Silverman telling MTV. It got harder toward the end to find songs. We couldn't find 15 songs every year that were new anthems. But then there's the second half of what happened. Jock Jams soon became a victim of their own success. The labels who had previously licensed the music to Jock Jams soon decided to cut out the middleman, which was Tommy Boy Records, and they decided to start making their own compilation albums. By this point in time, there were essentially 4 major record labels who controlled the industry, and they would negotiate between themselves to put out a yearly compilation album called Now That's What I Call Music. The royalties from these deals would be far more lucrative than what Tommy Boy Records was offering, and soon enough the labels agreed to exclusively license their music to the Now compilations, basically making it next to impossible for Tommy Boy to license any music for the Jock Jams series. So what happened to Lynch? Well, she would leave Tommy Boy in the 90s, being burnt out by the demands of the music industry, and she would get involved in radio broadcasting and still continue to work with Queen Latifah, including on her HBO series Bessie, serving as an executive producer, and most recently she's worked with Sotheby's, auctioning vintage hip-hop, art, and collectibles. As for Castaldi, he continues to work for Madison Square Garden. That does it for today's video, guys. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like button and subscribe, and we'll see you again in Rock and Roll True Stories.